Well, okay, you can't have a society of people who don't want to be in the society. If you have a society of people who don't want to be in the society, they're going to eventually override the rules limitations that have been imposed on them until they have reached an equilibrium with the rules that have been imposed on them. So they will eventually provide themselves their own order. So preventing liberty from occurring, preventing their own freedom of beliefs is a futile process because society is a collection of individuals inherently with order to contain them all. What is the order defined by? The order is defined by what the people in that society agree to. If someone doesn't want to be in that society, if someone does not subscribe to the beliefs in that society, then they have no purpose in being in the society. But if they have agreed to the rules and they have chosen to limit their beliefs in particular ways that they deem fit, then the proper order is maintained. How much time do I have?
You got a minute and a half left.
Okay. We have to look at the extremes here. On one hand, if you have a society that doesn't preserve any of the individual rights whatsoever, then the people are basically slaves to the society. They have no freedom whatsoever in the society. They have no choice whatsoever. Okay, and in this situation, the people in that society will not want to be in that society. They will not want to subscribe to the beliefs in that society. The society is acting as a tyrannical force against the people's beliefs and their individual rights, their freedom of expression, for example. Um,
44 seconds left.
okay. um, One last thing. I mean, okay, to sum it up, basically, a society is a collection of people. Without the people in the society, if there are no people in the society, then a society wouldn't exist. Okay, so there has to be some people in there, and in order for those people to remain in the society, they have to have their individual rights maintained.
Time.
So yeah.
Okay. Next for speech.
I'm ready.
Yep. Time starts now.
Okay, so society is a group of individuals who bond together in light of helping each other maintain existence within the world. So when it comes to natural rights and individual rights of the people within the society, the rights of those people are defined insofar as the consensus of the group as a whole defines those rights. So, for example, natural rights do not exist unless the consensus group as a whole agrees upon certain rights. So, for example, let's say the society gets together. Okay, they're exploring out their tribe or whatever, and one guy finds a piece of gold on the ground. Okay, so he makes a property claim to that piece of gold. Now I own that. All right, then the burden of justification lies on him to justify why it's better for him to have a piece of gold as opposed to the members of the whole to own it holistically. So that's where the basis of law is formed. The rights are only defined insofar as the group as a whole agrees that through that individual's liberty, that it's better for him to maintain that piece of gold. My contention is that it's better for society to prioritize societal goods because everyone within the society is in an implicit contract to help and benefit each other in existing within society. And they define the laws on their own as opposed to some metaphysical essence which would give them that liberty. So if you were to argue the opposition to argue that liberty should be prioritized, they have to somehow justify why liberty is an innate part of being an individual within a society as opposed to the members of the society justifying it and applying that concept of liberty to them outside of that implicit nature. How much time do I have left?
minute 10.
Furthermore, if there has to be some limits on liberty within societies, right? So there has to be some law because individuals can't just do whatever they want. Because then if you lay down a law of liberty within the society, then you have to agree that you can't compromise on other people's liberty because that would be the core of it. So there would have to be some form of system in place, which furthermore implies that there has to be some system to define liberty in the first place. Otherwise, there's nothing defining it. There's nothing to defend. There's no justification for any claims to anything. It has to be an agreed upon consensus of every individual in the society that liberty even exists in the first place. And that's why we should prioritize societal goods because it benefits society as a whole as opposed to the one individual who it might benefit, and maybe that individual wouldn't know what's best for the society and wouldn't contribute to it. Therefore, it would be unjust behavior. Uh, that's all I got.
Alright, cool. Alright, crossfire. What is it, 2 or 3 on this? 2 minutes? Crossfire. Or 3 minutes crossfire, I don't remember.
Minutes.
3.
2 minutes.
2?
That's
2
minutes
minutes.
crossfire. Okay, go.
So firstly,
No. This is just between Zach and Basement Overlord. Then after the speech,
Oh.
just you two go.
okay, go.
Alright, 2 minutes. Time starts
Oh
now.
my God. Can I get some help in this? Can we like double up and
What's
like
your
both-
justification for liberty?
Oh my God. All right, let me just. I mean, okay. Okay, if you have a society, say one person decides to start a society. He's like, all right, I want to start a society, okay? And so he needs at least one other person to be in the society. You can't have a society of one person. So he goes and finds one other person, and he's like, you want to be in my society? The other person's like, sure, I'll be in your society, okay? The extreme of your point is that he would have total control over this one person. This one person, he'd find a piece of gold or whatever you said.
No.
And-
He would. Okay. Once he found that one person, they would both agree upon to be in society, and they would most likely operate under what's best for the both of them because they're operating as a cohesive whole, a society.
Okay, but in order for that to happen,
So if he
those
found a
two
piece of
people
gold on the
have to-
ground,
Hold on. In order for that to happen, each of these people have to have their individual rights maintained. They can have a societal contract to share this gold together, but they have to maintain their individual rights in order to bring this societal contract into fruition. They're not relinquishing their freedom, their rights, and they're bound by the societal contract. In fact, this societal contract is upholding their individual rights.
well,
because they
exactly,
all
it has to
agree
fulfill
on
it. The society or the law that's made fulfills the natural rights because they're not in play naturally. There has to be some system for it to be actualized. And in forming that system, if two people agree upon there's a system, then it's best to operate under what's best for both of them. Because if one of them started doing whatever the fuck they wanted, then it's going to tear the society apart because they're not going to agree on what's
Time.
best for the society.
Okay, rebuttals. I want
Tavis.
1 minute of Tavis. 3 minutes on rebuttal.
So real quick with rebuttal, what am I doing? So I know for no.
I was gonna say, why don't we put 1 minute or 2 minutes of prep here, 1 minute. You're gonna go down his arguments, Zachary's arguments, and answer them. So neither side numbered their arguments, makes it a little bit more challenging to rebut. But I counted basically 4 distinct arguments on Zachary's side, which are rights are only the consensus of the group. The burden lies on he who claims ownership to show that benefits everybody, and that there is a social contract that's implicit, that that self-governance requires that we prioritize the group goods over liberty, because otherwise the will of the majority will be ignored, although he didn't phrase it exactly that way. So those are the arguments you want to respond to.
Please repeat those one more time, and then I'll be able. I should be
Okay.
able to.
That's why you should blow the road. It's
I'll write.
rights only the consensus of the group. The burden lies on him to justify ownership. an implicit contract, self-government, prioritize self-governance over individual rights. The fourth one I got. There must be law to protect liberty. Therefore, there must be a way to define liberty and reference my definitional methodology, namely consensus, and cross-apply self-governance, because if we don't prioritize consensus as the defining mechanism, then we are engaged in some kind of oppression because we're denying people their right to self-governance.
All right.
All right, ready?
Whenever
3
ready.
minutes. Time starts now.
So first, the consensus of the group. We're implying here that the group is within itself not corrupt. Look, for example, we'll use something like Nazi Germany. While the group may say that this person is not allowed to individually have a belief or a goal or something like that, not to be racist, yeah. Anyway, but allowed to have this belief or this thought process, this goal is the example that you gave. The group may, in the sense of not having liberty, oppress the individual. And the individual being the fact that the consensus is upon the group and not the individual person within the group, then goes unheard by the group. So effectively you end up with a consensus that is oppressive in itself, because we'll use as an example, society could suddenly decide that religion in itself is bad, so people lose a very specific part of themselves. They lose that liberty because, are you stopping me or do I have 2 minutes?
Yeah, a little less, 1:45.
Okay, because when that is taken from them and they oppress. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Self-government over individual rights. My brain's gone blank.
This is standard for debate. It always happens.
I'm going to move to define liberty. To define liberty in the individual sense does not imply anarchy. It implies that there are a group of people coming together with individual beliefs, coming to a consensus within those individual beliefs. You can preserve your own individuality while having this sense of group consensus. In preserving that individuality, you make sure that tyranny does not root up within that group consensus. Because if certain people take power within that liberty, it can become tyrannical. Hitler was a good example. Some early cases of the USSR, the Catholic Church. There are a variety of early cases in which this group consensus of defined liberty was in fact flawed because no one was allowed to be individual and go, this is wrong. People weren't allowed to think for themselves. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Now we've got cross between. I don't know, so we've got second rebuttal. John, your rebuttal. Time start now.
So, I remember, Travis, you said that,
Hey, George,
there's...
John, let me stop. Because I went over the arguments for him, I should go over the arguments for you too, so you don't have to wonder.
Yeah, you're not rebuttaling.
We were kind of keeping up with them, but yeah, you go ahead and identify them for us.
Yeah, okay, so you're rebuttaling this case, okay? Preventing liberty is futile. Individuals comprise society, and proper order emerged from voluntary participation, not coerced participation. And that one way to measure this round is to compare the extremes. If you look at the extreme of individual rights versus the extreme of oppression, the former is much preferable than the latter. And then lastly, they said society supervenes upon the individual, that society itself can't exist without the individuality existing first.
Well, I I've heard a lot now that that there's a possibility that the group could be corrupt, but I haven't
Okay,
yet heard
time.
the note. Yeah.
Can we start time? Time starts
Yeah,
now.
Yeah, so I've heard the notion that the group can be corrupt, but I've yet to hear the notion that the individuals themselves could be corrupt. That the individuals, that some subgroup of individuals could form and enact their own oppressive policies against the minority. The fact that we have a democratic society, a bigger group that runs under democratic principle, lessens the chance that there is some majority against a minority dynamic. Some other form of voluntary violence, I guess you could call it. Let's see. Also, that I remember Overlord mentioned that individuals naturally will work towards freedom, but they will work against oppression. Again, this is also a bit more difficult if there is a minority of individuals that are being oppressed versus a majority, a group that is formed that is oppressive. So having a group in place, having a democratic society in place to begin with, minimizes this risk. How am I running out of time?
1:38 left.
Let's see. Yeah. Also, this follows with what Zachary was saying before, that again, natural rights exist as a product of consensus, as an agreement between individuals, which in this case, in our argument, would define a group. So it is very difficult to define a consensus without a group, especially in the case that there might be some bias towards one behavior with one subgroup of individuals versus another, where one would be larger, one would be smaller. In the end, policy at a higher level minimizes this. And I'll stop there.
Okay. Second cross.
Is this Grand
Tavis
Cross?
versus
Start now.
second Tavis versus John.
Oh.
Time starts now.
Oh.
So you state that without the group, we have the threat of these subgroups, but without the individuals within these groups, for these individual liberties, with these individual minds, we run the risk of people becoming so. Here's a good example. Israel, they have what is called the Council of 10. Within there, and I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but within the Council of 10, 9 people come to an individual consensus. The 10th person, their job is to question what the 9 people came up with and come up with viable reasons and arguments as to why that is. Without individual liberties, without individualism, we cannot have this 9th person. And the case that they used this for was the 1972 Yom Kippur War. If that was right after that they took and enacted the Council of 10. The individual liberty with the individual mind creates what is this consensus of the group, but the problem is without the individual mind, you reach a point of stagnation. You reach a point where there is no growth because people are not sitting back going.
We didn't imply that individual minds couldn't exist within a group of a democratic society. Again, these natural rights, we call them natural rights because they're things that we equally want, but we've come to that consensus that we do want them equally. So,
but
there's not. This is something I forgot to cover before. There's no implication that we are trying to stifle individuals with a group of a democratic society. That is not an implication. That is not implied by what we're saying.
Okay.
Time. Okay, let's go.
Grand Cross.
1 minute. Let's do 1 minute let's do 1 minute, then Grand Cross, then 1 minute, 1 minute. Okay, so now it's going to be Patrick, you get 1 minute saying why you guys are winning this round currently. Time starts now.
Okay. So John, you brought up a point that you're not trying to limit, oppress the individual rights of the people. Likewise, our argument is not that the individual rights are there to completely annihilate the societal goods. In most cases, the individual rights of these people align with the societal goods. They have subscribed to the society, have subscribed to this societal contract, and so their individual rights are aligned with the societal goods. And so it comes down to if both of these if they are both parallel to each other, the question is, what does the society prioritize? And the answer is the society prioritizes the individual rights. They're in parallel, but the individual rights trump the societal good because the individual rights are what brought us to the societal goods of this society. These individual.
Okay, now it's Zachary.
We good? I'm starting?
Time starts now.
Okay. Individual rights did not bring the society together. Liberty brought the society together. We're not arguing that there isn't liberty, and we're also not stifling individuality. That's a straw man as well. We do recognize that individuals have their own minds and they act in their own best interest. So we're not stifling individuality, and we're not rejecting the notion that liberty exists. What our argument says is that, yes, they had the freedom to bring the society together, but the society decides whether liberty within that society is morally just or not some meta authority. Right? So if liberty is good, respecting it is prioritizing the societal good. If everyone in the society agrees that liberty is a good thing, then they are acting within the societal good to actualize liberty. Actualizing it is a societal good. So we're not stifling individuality. We're not stifling liberty. We're just saying that if they agree upon within the law, within the contract, that liberty is a good thing that they're defining, then that alone is acting within the societal good.
Alright. Okay, 4 minute Grand Cross. Remember, Cross is asking questions and giving answers to questions, not testifying. Time starts now.
Okay, if an individual values liberty and the society also values liberty, what takes precedent?
Sorry, what was the question?
Yes, yeah, read.
If an individual values liberty and the societal good is that they're trying to enforce liberty, what does the society value when it's upholding liberty?
Well, okay, if they respect liberty as a good thing, liberty is required to bring the society together, but it's up to them whether or not they want to respect liberty as a morally just thing within the society or not. For example, if someone finds like 10 spears, okay, and it's his property right? But I'm sure to have all 10 spears, but the other like 9 members of society are probably going to argue that, hey, we should all have one spear so we're all equally defended, and in that instance they would minimize liberty. So the society as a whole, the consensus, the democratic process decides whether or not liberty is morally just or not.
Okay, but so if say one person grabs 10 spears and the 9 people decide that they want their spears, like you said, isn't it the individual's responsibility to grab their spear themselves? They have just the same capacity and ability as the one person who grabbed 10 spears. They have the same capacity to grab one spear from that person.
Well, no, the justification lies on the guy who found the spears to justify as to why he should have all 10 spears, as opposed to distributing it through the societal good. The justification lies on him to identify why it's better for him to have all 10 spears or not, and it's up to the group as a whole, if they all chose to create the society out of their own liberty, to whether or not him having his own liberty to keep all the spears is good or not.
Okay, but ultimately, a society, the 9 people who don't have spears anymore, they're a collection of people who all have the individual right to a spear. They want their spear. So they are going to come together and dispute this guy's claim. Like you said, the burden is on him. The burden is on him to justify why he has 10 spears. Each of the 9 people with their individual beliefs and their rights come together and want to refute the reason why he has 10 spears.
What mode of interaction do these 9 people have to deny this one person's claim to property?
You mean?
Violence?
Wait, what do you mean?
Here, no, okay, here the thing is, okay, it's not. It's up to okay. They only have an individual right to claim those spears if they want to. That's something as well. It's up to them. They may decide that it is better for him to have all that shit. You know, they made as a consensus decide. Okay, you have 10 spears. You've got 10 fucking arms. We only have 2. You use that shit. Okay, like it's up to the group consensus as a whole to prioritize the societal good. If they decide that the best societal good would be to have this guy be their like one warrior machine with 10 fucking spears, then that's gonna be the societal good. You know.
But in that society, those 9 people, that society is consisting of 9 people who share the individual belief that this guy should either have 10 spears or this guy should not have 10 spears. It's not just one giant entity. It's 9 people come together with their individual rights and their beliefs that this guy should have 10 spears or not.
See, I think one of the main issues here that we're running into is the fact that we are looking at the consensus as though, and I'm going to sound so contrary to but we're looking at both sides as if both are bad, which I know we're supposed to do, but
At what?
Well, yeah, we're debating it.
No, we're not arguing liberty is bad. We're
Mm,
arguing that.
I think you're talking about we're just trying to debate the issue on a society prioritizes societal goods or not, or individual rights.
Yeah,
And
well,
I'm saying that
society would
individual
decide.
rights, the individual
Okay.
rights are a collection of societal good. Like the societal good is a collection of these individuals, their rights, their beliefs, to have this spear or to give this spear to another person, and they're agreeing individually as a collective body, this guy should have spears.
Okay, cool. That's what happens in debate rounds is they'll let you finish your sentence. If you go on for a little bit, they'll tap, get louder until you can't hear yourself. You get called It's called getting knocked down. Like knocked down, or something like that. Anyway, 1 minute and it's Tavis's turn. Tell why you won. Go.
without the individual, without individual liberties, we cannot have this thing that we call a consensus. Without the individual's mind, the individual's way of thinking, without these individual liberties, we cannot have a society. Society in itself, while it may be a collection, is also a collection of individual people. Without that individualism, you end up with an effectively stagnant and dead society. And that's basically all I've got.
Right, John. 1 minute. Time starts now.
Yeah. So again, our claim doesn't lie within liberty or individuality. That's irrelevant to the claims that we're making. We're only saying that individuality leads eventually to consensus if we want to live together, if we want to coexist. And that consensus implies some form of policy that stays mostly static within that society. You can't have a society that exists purely on the basis of individuality, or else group dynamics are not controlled. They'll happen on their own. It's going to happen eventually at some point. If you go from the notion that you are going to have to institute some form of group dynamic, you'll at least avoid forms of violence that form from the fact that you didn't have it in the first place.
Time. Interesting. That was super interesting. I think the neg side won. John and Zach won the round. But
That's sure.
and the reason is because
Their arguments were better structured. Honestly, I'll say that.
yeah, they're very structured. Basically, you didn't answer the point they were running here about the burden, right? It's like you tried to circumvent the burden instead of challenging it directly. Zach has said, okay, you have a burden to show that it's in everyone's best interest for you to have all 10 spears, right? But you'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Why would we have the burden to show why it's okay for me to have found 10 spears? First of all, that question. Second of all, if in fact, what if he had made the spears? Does he still have that same burden if he made them himself? Because they didn't exist prior to him making them.
Yeah, see, I do have a thought. I do have a question for you, Zach. Okay, and I mean this was obviously not put in there, but within the thought process, okay, this one guy has 10 spears. What if the other 9 people are completely psychotic?
What if
Why
the
are
other
they
nine?
psychotic?
Well, I
No,
assume that.
this is what I was. Oh,
No, going on.
this is what I was trying to get at before, like with violence and all that. Like, what if it's in this one man's best interest to kill everyone else that doesn't have a spear? That would be his individual prerogative, wouldn't it? So
But that's not a
why?
rights argument. That's a
That's a morality argument, not a right.
what you're saying individual rights do not mean a lack of constraint. It means you are a right is that which confers a duty upon another. So if I have a right, that means you have a duty to non-interference. It doesn't work the other way um, where you go, well, oh, I have the right to do what I want, and you have to
Okay.
show that you do something. Instead, it's like I I have the duty to not interfere.
Well, see, my argument
So
was that once
yeah.
they had the liberty to start the society, but then it's up to them whether or not in the law that they decide to have, whether or not its liberty is respected or not. They define whether or not liberty is just or not. We're not denying that liberty doesn't exist or anything, but we're arguing that um, the society as a whole decides whether or not it's respected and whether or not it's beneficial. If they decide that liberty is in fact just, then that in itself is a societal good in and of itself, because then everyone agrees that it's a good thing. And the only way to
Okay.
judge the standards by which something is just in a society is the consensus. It's the only way.
All right. So what he's trying to do there, he's trying to run this little framework argument, right? Where he's saying, look, we should prioritize societal goods because then if society agrees that individual rights are good, then society will prioritize them. And if they don't agree, well, then they shouldn't have to prioritize them because self-governance, right?
Yeah, that's the gist
But
of it.
yeah, but see, it's a framework game because he's saying, oh well, if society values individual rights, then they'll prioritize them in legislation. It implies as though rights are something given by law. A right, again, is a duty. It's a duty other people have not to interfere. So I
Yeah, but
would,
the society would have to define that though.
Can I throw something out there? Can I throw something out there?
uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at it maybe a little more primal. Well, see, I'm a less formal society. We're talking, we're thinking democratic society here, which is what the primary points that were brought up. But I'm going to use the gold brick as an example. Okay, the individual person finds this gold brick, puts the work into it, finds this thing, goes out looking for it, finds it. With that individualism, with that right, that is his, he found it. The group has no right to this thing because they didn't put forth the work and the effort to this. If the group took that from him, because even though they didn't do the work for it, that's tyranny.
Well, if he's a part of that society, then as a whole, they decide whether or not he owns that on his own. They decide whether to
See,
respect that or not.
The
but
reason why
that's
it's a framework game, guys, is because the reason what he's doing there is he's saying we don't actually have any definition for justice. That all things are equally just as long as there's consensus about it and it's derived by self-governance. But that's
so.
obviously not the case.
So
Explain.
what you're
Explain why it's not the case.
are you real quick? Are you effectively saying that justice and this Zach? Are you saying that justice is a relative thing to society?
That's what the argument he was making. Yeah, he was saying that the justice is conditional upon society's agreement.
Well, okay,
My
I
point.
want to differentiate. Just because society sees something just does not mean that it's objectively moral. All that means is that the society at
See,
the
and
time is seeing it that way, but it doesn't make any moral
that right there,
claims.
but that right there is why individual rights are so important. Is because the society may not necessarily keep to morality, and without individual rights,
Yeah, but
while
you're
our
assuming a
morality is
society has to be built on morals. It doesn't have to be. There's objective moral
oh
standards we can
no
operate
no
under,
no
but
no no no. Here's the thing. Even cannibals have morality. They don't eat the people within their own tribes, but they'll eat everybody else. There is a sense of morality even with them, even with animals. with a pack mentality, there is a sense of morality. You do not harm the people within the dogs within the pack.
But who
Everybody
cares?
else.
Who cares? There's a sense of morality in all these various places. That's not what justifies anything. The point is this: if there's justice, if we feel as though we have a claim that someone else is in the wrong or is doing something unethical when they commit violence against us, then
You
we
have
need
the
to have
right
a
to say
system
so.
to explain why that claim is more true than the alternative claim. And obviously it is the case. If somebody comes up and bashes you in the face with a club and kicks you a bunch of time and spits on you and walks away laughing, well, that was fun. Well, then obviously one person has a much more legitimate claim to complain than the other person, right? One person has a legitimate claim to say, hey, that was immoral of you. I am in the right. You are in the wrong. And then that should transfer to a legal claim, a civil claim for damages and
Well, it should.
potentially
It
the
should.
right to.
But ought doesn't apply. It is. You know.
But that's what this resolution is about, though. A just society should. Or just, I mean, when you say a just society prioritizes, what you're saying is if
Well,
we
it's
want
just
our
I
society to
prioritize
be,
the societal goods. But what if the societal good is something that's not moral?
because it says prioritize over, which means you have to choose one over the other. You can't say, well, they're the same. We don't have to prioritize. The whole point of the debate is that they are in conflict. We assume they're in conflict. We figure out which one we ought to prioritize over which other one.
Okay.
So
Can't you just find can't you just find an example where, like, just one example where it would be beneficial to preserve individual rights over societal goods? Like, couldn't you just find one example?
one example won't do it because the reality is you're going to have circumstances where sometimes prioritizing the group good has
You know,
fewer harms and more benefits, and sometimes prioritizing individual rights has fewer harms and more benefits. So a
Yeah,
single
so like
example won't do you any
so like
good.
how do you answer that question then if there's like times when it's better to weigh
I
one
got,
and better to weigh the other?
I got a thing here. One of
I
the
didn't
things
say
that,
there was times where it was
Well,
better, though. I just said
I,
that sometimes they have differing impacts. Go ahead, Tavis.
that's sort of a you go. Sorry.
so real quick,
Yeah.
one of the problems all six of us are running into right now. Of course, it says there's six of us in here, but I only see.
Robert. Yeah.
I
Robert's
One guy on the
Robert's
side.
he's what do they call that? What do they call it
Hi,
when you
Robert.
sit
He's here now.
and watch and don't contribute to something? What do they call that?
Okay, well, okay, all five of us did
audience
this
or something?
discussion.
A lurker.
Lurker. Yeah, that's the
Lurker.
word.
So, okay, all five of us within these discussions, the one issue that I'm seeing, and the thing they teach you in my philosophy classes for debates, and I mean, you obviously, Eric, because you've done what you do, is it's good to define things, and I don't think we've necessarily truly defined what individual liberties are, nor has we
I have.
defined.
Is that which confers a duty upon on another. That's what a right is. A liberty is different.
Let me clarify. Let me finish rather. I don't think that was, or I might have missed it. Might just be me. I don't know that was necessarily clearly stated at the beginning
No,
of.
it wasn't stated in the
discussion.
round. You guys didn't make that
I
argument.
wanted
John,
to
go
say
ahead.
something that might clear this up. It was something I was trying to get at, but I was in the middle of things. So, I don't think there's too much there's not really a binary merit to one or the other, one paradigm or the other.
That's not
It's-
true.
Yeah, well, I agree because it's like how
Well-
can you say one is absolutely
Yeah,
better?
yeah, that's what you're trying to get to.
You're asking the wrong question. How can you justify the violence you're committing against people with your framework? Is a real question. You see,
No,
what I'm saying,
no,
we should
I'm
prioritize
not.
individual rights. What I'm saying
I'm
is
not making I'm not making a policy claim. I'm not making a policy claim. I'm not going for laws. That's not.
okay, well,
that's
I'm
not
only
what I'm
making
doing.
policy claims. I'm not interested in arguing the ethics of things that aren't things that can be codified. Because in that case, you're not talking about an actual violation. It's mushy. If you're talking about actual violations of actual rights, then it's not mushy. It's fucking rock
Okay, so-
solid lock in place.
Yeah.
Boom.
So
This
how-
might lead to policy claims, but what I'm trying to argue right now is that there are certain merits to individuality, and there are certain merits to having an existing group. For
I'm
instance,
not denying
okay,
that groups are. I'm not saying that. Look, I'm not saying grouping of individuals together is inherently bad. I'm not saying, oh my God, there are 6 of us here. We're going to start oppressing fuckers any minute now. You know, that's not going to happen. I'm just saying.
Everybody
But
can
what I was
that's the group consensus.
wait. But I just want to say one thing, that you can have problems where groups oppress minorities. That's what I was trying to get at. You start with individual rights, you start with individual freedoms, and if there is a case where there is some minority that is being oppressed by a majority of individuals that are grouped together to go against them, then you have policies and laws and structures in place to protect the minority that might be oppressed.
But not if they look. This is the problem. We keep thinking about people as though groups are actual things, right? Groups are fictions we create. When we say, "Oh, well, these are black people," that's a fiction we create. Those aren't black people. Those are a bunch of individuals. Some of the
societies don't
self-identified.
exist.
Okay, that's all well and good. I'm not trying to label them. I'm not trying to say that this
I'm
is
not
this,
saying you're trying to label anybody in particular. I'm saying,
Okay,
Yeah, but it doesn't matter for you as a group or not. I'm saying there are some people that are being held down. They have nowhere to go. That's all I'm trying to say. That's why we have.
John, I know you're not very conflict oriented, John. I'm not actually conflicting with you. Remember, I'm just being Eric.
Yeah.
I gotta say that this.
Yeah, but you're trying to make it look like I am.
Let me ask, okay, he left. Can you hear me?
I think he's coming back. I think he's just turning the light out.
Okay. You say that you can't group like an entire group of minorities together, okay? Then how can you even group a society together if it's not like an actual thing, like what you said?
With Eric,
What's the difference?
Are you asking Eric or me?
Oh, I'm asking host Eric.
Okay. Can Eric hear us right now?
So what you're saying here is, how can we even have society if the group is nothing but a fiction?
Well, let me ask. Okay, Eric has his stuff back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, you said that you can't group like an entire group of minorities together because they're just a collection of individuals, right? Is that what you said?
I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying that we need to stop pretending as though groups can take action. They can't, and that's the problem we have.
Because they're not things, right? Because you said they're like not things.
They're fictions.
Okay, yeah. So then, what's the difference between that and a society? A society is just like it's not a thing.
A society. The way we define society is basically this. Society is, well, from a government's perspective, society represents the failure of individuals to assert their righteous claim to independent sovereignty.
I'll make the claim that humanity is inherently tribalistic. That we are inclined towards going to other humans.
I agree. Well, I agree.
Okay.
I mean, that's what makes us humans a lot of times.
And the easiest way to say that is that you need at least 2 people to even breed. So,
but how does it benefit the tribe to allow unjustified aggression? Go ahead, Tavis.
I was going to agree with a couple of these guys here, because if you look at it even from a psychology standpoint, we create groups. When you are isolated by yourself, we talk to ourselves. We create excess personalities in order to have that group feeling. You want to be with other people. So I agree. Was it Zach that said we're innately tribal?
But that doesn't change the fact that it's a fiction, right?
Well, see, but here's the thing: what you're calling a fiction may not be a fiction, but rather an actual. Hang on, rather an actual biologically programmed necessity.
But it is a fiction.
Just because we're necessarily social doesn't mean we're required to commit violence against our fellows. This is the problem. When we are prioritizing social goals through the means of violating individual rights, that's the problem.
Let me clarify. I'm not implying violence is here. I'm saying...
see, that's the thing. You don't recognize what you're saying is violent. You have no idea it is. Because you're using this word we. Well, we can do this, we can do that. Fuck we, dude. I don't know who we is. We means who? We don't even agree on our definition of a basic term. How can we possibly agree on what's a good enough reason to violate my rights?
By doing exactly this, what we're doing right now, which is individual communication within the group.
Right.
I'm
But
just,
I
I'm
mean,
just
the
wondering,
point is, if it's done right, then we get rid of all the we shit. Go ahead, John.
Philosopher Eric, I want to ask you a question. In an individualistically centered society, completely libertarian, there's very little policy to do with any kind of oppression or whatever else you want to call it.
What keeps
Is
us in
there
anarchy?
is there a possibility that there could be a group that forms that could be considered oppressive, that could be considered violent
Not
towards
if the
others?
government's doing its job, because its only job, its only focus should be on the protection of individual rights, along with a certain amount of small infrastructure stuff.
And what if those people, those ideas become the government? They become the policymakers.
Well, then that's another example of tyranny. I mean, that's another example of the group oppressing individuals. If the group is doing it right, all it is doing is protecting individual rights and preventing other individuals from violating their rights and preventing any mechanism of governments from violating their rights.
I'm on this note. I'm gonna wrap it up because Patrick needs to go to sleep. Patrick or his roommate getting I guess impatient. But I this was
You
really
look so
enjoyable.
much better with the black behind you like that. That's cool.
You do look better. But but this was really fun. Went on for almost 50 minutes now. That was really fun debate. Um, thanks for joining us, Patrick, and John and Robert the lawyer and Tavis.
Yeah,
Thank you.
cool. Thanks.
But yeah, thanks for watching Talking with Famous People.